This is Visions Under Construction, a chance for our guests to share their visions and tell us what they're working on. For their continued support, we would like to thank Simwood, straight-talking, forward-thinking telecoms. Simwood.com. Why not make Cloudonics your communication partner? Go to cloudonics.io. You can find everything about the VUC at vuc.me, thanks to Bluehost, and thanks also to zipdx.com, the conference bridge, and to voxphone.com for local rate dial-ins. It's not 100% true. You can't find everything out about the VUC by going to that, because you can't find out about this. Yes, it's the leather coat sent to me by that sweetheart, Suzanne Bowen. You have to go see what she's into, what she's doing. You go to Suzadi.com, S-U-Z, or Z if you're in the United States, AHDI.com. We're warming up for Mr. Corrado Mela, who's going to come and give us a piece of his mind, and believe me, this is worth listening to. But before we do that, I wanted to just mention a couple of very quick things, and how we even came to this topic with Corrado. Oh, look, my brother's face is cut off. Let me just move that over before we get too far into this. There we go. Now you got my dear brother Art, who's a great jazz pianist. Two things. First of all, it's really interesting to watch the internet these days, as Google Plus has been announced sunsetting in next August. But Google Plus, everybody knows Google Plus. Well, there's nobody there, ghost town, blah, blah, blah. Well, there were a lot of people there, and they're all disappointed. But more importantly, there's a lot of buzz on this on the internet today, this week, which is the confidence lost in Google. Not just Google Plus, but Inbox, which a lot of people got addicted to. I like Inbox. Okay, Inbox was a playground that they took all the good things and put it into Gmail, and that's fine. But Google also, there was a reader, there was all kinds of products. And it's become obvious that Google just plays with this stuff. Once they're done dog fooding their product, they play with it, they put it out there. My wife and I use a thing called Keep, for example, keep.google.com. Super useful. There are other things you can buy that do that, but there it is. It's part of your Google thing. You don't have to log in, blah, blah, blah. Tomorrow I realize that tomorrow they could just say, Keep. We're not going to keep it. So, and I didn't even mean a pun. It just came naturally. Anyway, that and the fact that I just saw, and this is what reminded me, on my way back from an X-ray, I saw a huge poster it was a picture of a camel. I'm going, what is that? And it said camel and a pixel. And I realized it's an ad for the Google Pixel, which is a overpriced phone, almost as expensive or more expensive than the iPhone. Both of them are ridiculously priced. If you're very rich and you want to pay $1,200 for a phone, dollars, euros, pounds, that's fine. But the average person is whose needs could be satisfied for $350 or less in any of those currencies. I know Corrado agrees with me, and I'm going to introduce him in 1 second. But I just wanted to mention the origin of this topic, because it flared up kind of politely by the fact that we were talking about Microsoft. I'm going to let him explain this, because we mentioned something about Microsoft, and Corrado said something about open source, which is 100% true. Since I'm sure you remember it better than I do, Corrado, why don't you take over and
I'll try to.
Origin story.
And not to get too boring. Microsoft recently has made quite a lot of headlines with problems with the latest distribution, the 1809 version of Windows 10, that had a number of problems. That was deleting user files. And there's another problem that is hanging now with zip files. So there's a lot of QA and quality control has been left behind by Microsoft. They specifically got rid of their QA team, quality testers, because they said, well, we have quick release life cycles, agile programming. We should be able to be responsive. But practically, what they did is to dump beta testing of their software, both operating system and applications like Office, on us, the end users. And the backlash is coming. On the other hand, on the same moment that Microsoft had, in the same period, the same week, Microsoft had all these problems, I finally upgraded after a bit of soul searching and checking that everything was all right, my desktop, work desktop, from the long-term release version of Ubuntu or Kubuntu specifically, from 2016, the 16.04 to the 18.04 version, long-term release of Ubuntu. Everything went smoothly. I had everything, my files, my links, my bookmarks, everything was in the same place I left that when I decided to upgrade. So the quality control and the end of the product, the quality of the end product was much better in an operating system that is completely free and is run mostly by volunteers than an operating system developed by a huge worldwide corporation with billions of pounds, dollars, euros at their disposal. How does that happen? My opinion is because money does not buy value. And that's the start of the discussion that me and Randy had, and probably even a final point of that. I think that is a good starting point for what I'm going to say, but I'll let someone interject and intervene in that with their opinion first, if anyone has.
Well, if anyone's going to interject, it's going to always be me, right? Unless Andy wants to say something, or Michael. But I found this fascinating, Corrado, and as I told you earlier, it's an interesting to look at what money even is. They talk about fiat, and you mentioned
fiat currencies, yes.
Well, fiat, which is real money, but I mean, money. I don't know. In the United States, money was supposed to be pegged to gold at Fort Knox. How does that work in the UK, by the way?
No, it doesn't. No longer works anywhere like that. There is no requirement for any national bank like the Bank of England to have a counter value of, or the Bank of Europe, the European Bank, to have any counter value of the money that is put in circulation. There is no longer that requirement, and that's why there's that strange thing called quantitative easing, where central banks are allowed to print money and put that in circulation at no cost for anyone.
And that's why I mentioned cyber crypto, whatever it is. I can never remember the name of it because I got out of it long ago, and I'm not that. Look at the wagging tail. Let's put the wagging tail on for a second. This is pretty interesting. Somebody's happy. Look at that. That's cool. Anyway, just a quick off-topic related, though, Corrado. You're in Scotland, the Bank of Scotland. How does that work? They're just printing money at will?
Well, Bank of Scotland, Royal Bank of Scotland, and Clydesdale Bank have a license from the Bank of England to print banknotes. So they can print banknotes. They are pounds, British pounds, at the same value. They are not what is called legal currency, but it's, I think, but it's a very, very strict definition that is restricting that you can only pay fines to the government in English pounds if you want to pay in banknotes. Otherwise, it's all digital now, so you don't go with a barrel load of cash to pay a fine, and you don't do that any longer. So it's irrelevant. Some shops run by, I prefer not to define them, in England, refused to take banknotes from Scottish banks, saying that they're not legal tender. That's the definition. But it's absolutely pointless. It's not even a problem anymore. It's just some sort of latent. It's not even racism. It's a bit of ignorance about the law and nothing else. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Sorry, I kind of turned the rudder a second here, but actually, you have a thing that you want to talk about, and we're talking about Your Life is a Lie, and I got the gist of that, and it's a great provocative title. So let's get started with that. What are we talking about here? We feel that how much you earn is important, and that creates status in life. What is the problem with that? I mean, I know, but why don't you give your opinion on all this?
Well, first of all, it's a bit challenging, and it's a concept that goes against what I'm trying to propose and trying to discuss. Everything we've been taught since early age. And it's probably a substantial paradigm shift that might encounter resistance inside yourselves and outside in society. But I think once the seed of doubt is sown down, the believers in the current system will need to live with a bit of cognitive dissonance, because you will understand that the system you're living now is a bit unjust and a bit incorrect. It will be uncomfortable and might generate rejection. So I don't want to put it too bluntly or too heavy of a discussion, but it can be a bit weird. I am starting really from the very start. And there is a diversion in astrophysics, if you allow me. And the question is, where does all the matter, all the things you can see and not see, you can feel, that surround you, come from? Does any one of you know?
Yeah, the stars.
Exactly. It's stars going supernova, and all the atoms of all the matter that you can see have come from stars. So a piece of earth, a piece of dirt, a piece of plastic, anything you have around you and is inside you is coming from matter that has been expelled by a supernova. Everything in this planet. We are carbon-based life forms. We are made of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, because we're 70% water. And we have other minerals inside, like calcium and many other things. But all these and all that is on this planet, all the atoms that compose the matter on this planet, come from stars. And they come from the stars for free. Everything that has been on this planet forever, we didn't pay for it. Nobody paid for it. There is no need to get anything paid for. It's already here. And it has been here for billions of years before any life form was created on Earth. The fact that some human, after billions of years that all that matter was on this planet, took on itself to say that they owned a piece of land or owned some trees. How did we came to accept that concept, that a human that was here only from 300, 400,000 years ago is owning something that has been here for billions of years? That is a challenging concept to accept, and I still am a bit befuddled that humanity has accepted that. And from my point of view, is a false premise, and as a consequence, is a bit extreme from my point of someone's point of view, not mine. All private and public property is practically theft. And from that, all matter of discussion can spawn out. How did we accept that people can own a piece of land and exploit its resources and make a profit out of something they didn't have to pay for at the beginning, at the very beginning? Because once the cycle starts, if someone then sells that piece of land, the cycle is, we are entered a loop, a cycle that has no end. And I'll show you the consumeristic loop. Where does that end?
Michael had a comment.
There are cultures that did not buy into that phenomena until quite recently. American natives, most famously, their culture said you don't own the land. The land is basically part of you. But there are arguably, they were overtaken by other cultures where ownership of property was commonplace.
Which is actually the answer to the question, if there is one. It was done by force. Everything's done by force. So somehow, Corrado. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, I
Sorry,
thought.
Can I make a comment here?
Sure.
Go ahead. From ZipDX.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm out in the garage, therefore I'm on the phone. Does this not come from animal behaviour, though? If you look at any animal species around, they all have territories. And if one group impinges on another's territories, then war happens or destruction happens. Is this not just an extension of the same thing and to add civility to the same thing?
Some animals do. Many others are just roaming around. And if humans behave like animals and we're not better than animals, probably is not a good proposition. if I may.
But that puts a spin on your whole concept, Corrado.
That's a whole different subject.
Yeah, well, no, but it puts a spin on the fact that, well, first of all, animals, if you've ever watched any of the documentaries by, what's his name, the British...
David
Attenborough. It's pretty obvious that it's a tough world out there. The mean streets, even where there are no streets, the animals, just the name Attenborough, if you've ever watched any of his stuff, anyone listening to my voice now, if you've ever watched any of his stuff, you can see it's a cruel world for them. Now, I think what you were saying, Corrado, is that we supposedly evolved to the point where we're not like that. But I think that our evolution, and I'll turn it right over to you after this, our evolution became a way to do it more on paper, intellectually, and with... as a friend of mine used to say, when you own land, it's just a pointer in a file someplace. You don't own, the land is the land, and somewhere there's a pointer to a geometric part of what you own and so on. It's a great argument for just letting the ecology go and the world destroys itself so we can start over, actually, because we've come so far. Anyway, over to you.
Over to me. Well, the fact that when an individual takes some land that is practically not owed by him by any right, is subtracting that from anyone else and everyone else. It's a balance. Animals claim some territories. They roam. They never stay. There's very little animals that insist on a single territory, and if they do, when they have consumed all the resources, they move. Yes.
Yeah, just to clarify, that's a great point. And what we can look at is that there is no such thing as animal empires like we humans have done.
No, exactly.
It's all local.
Another point, another shift onto that is we have only one planet. When we have consumed all the resources we have nowhere else to go. An animal can move when they have consumed all the resources on the territory they are using, and usually because they're not smart enough, abusing. They completely graze an entire area and then they move, like the sheep do, for example. So I don't think is a model of behavior we should attend to. It's counterintuitive and not smart enough. Okay, now I try to convey one of the two prongs of my vision. The second is a brief history of commerce, how we exchange goods and services. At the beginning, we simply with barter, exchanging directly goods and services. After that, for ease of doing things, we started using precious metals and precious stones or precious items, rare items like spices, anything exotic that was not indigenous to the area, as a means of exchanging value between third parties. So I could use an ounce of gold to buy a cow, and then the owner of the cow could use the ounce of gold to buy 10 sheep. But the inherent value in the gold or in the precious stones or anything else was a value in itself. So it was an item that was valued because of its beauty, because of its usefulness. And then as a reinforcement to that, many of you know that your wage is also called a salary. Where does that name comes from? Salary is the anglicization of salarium in Latin, and salis is the name of salt in Latin.
Makes total sense.
All Roman soldiers were paid in salt. They were given a salary because salt was useful and precious for the troops to heal wounds and to conserve meat, to conserve fish. So for troops out in the field doing battle, salt was a very precious and at that time rare, because it was difficult to obtain, means of giving value. It had an inherent value. From that point, then, what happened? The powerful started trading with the tribes and people and cultures and societies they conquered with valueless currency, with coinage in pure metals like pewter or lead or anything that didn't have an inherent value or even a use. And it was given a conventional value, like a guarantee. Okay, I'll give you this piece, and I guarantee that this piece of lead has the value of 10 sestertium, but it didn't have any value inside. That's the origin of our currency. We have a piece of paper that is a guarantee that we have a value in hand that doesn't have any value for itself, especially now that, as we discussed before, banks don't have to have a correspondent value in assets to guarantee for the banknote you have in your hand.
So isn't the complaint about cryptocurrency is that it doesn't make any sense, this proof of work business? So that's my problem with all of this, is that none of it has any value, really, right?
No, but it's one of the ways to democratize a bit the distribution of money and the creation of money, whereas money that is created now by central banks with quantitative easing, as we discussed, is creating pieces of worthless paper that are just a virtual guarantee. They're numbers on a computer. They don't have a counter value in anything, in an asset. If all people, all citizens of a country would present the currency they have in their pockets to the central bank and ask for a counter value in valuable items, the bank would collapse instantly, because they don't have a counter value in anything valuable for the currency that is in circulation.
And as you know, that happened in, I think, 1929 in the United States, or was
and
it?
that happened in the case of Northern Rock, that failed because it had assets that had money promised around that didn't have cover. And it happened also in Argentina, I think, for their state bank. The same thing. The problem with that is also that with that kind of valueless coins, is really easy for a man in the middle to make a profit without adding value. And I see you're yawning.
No, on the contrary, no, I am. I was yawning because I'm tired, but it's interesting because I guess the argument about value would have to do with doing all the paperwork and bookkeeping and blah, blah, blah. However, as we've seen countless times in even the past couple of decades, say 2008, the so-called value that was added was actually crashing the stock market and putting a bunch of money into the plutocracy and all that. Anyway, I'm fascinated. I wasn't yawning for any particular reason. It's great. I think you're doing well. You're doing well. Go ahead.
The question is if the value added to managing currency is that self-referential mechanism. It's self-defeating. So I add value because I do things with money. But if money wasn't there, you're not adding value to anything. It's self-referential. You're taking money out of the loop instead of adding money to the loop. When a manufacturer transforms raw materials into a finished product, it's adding value to the raw product, to the raw materials, adding value to a final product that has an added value because of that. Whereas when you subtract wealth from money in circulation, you're taking away value from the overall wealth of the planet.
PayPal.
Yeah. Yeah. Banks, anyone that interacts with transactions and is copying a slice, they are in fact taking wealth away from everyone, including themselves, because there is an exponential effect that is affecting all the economy for the money they are taking out, that is multiplying a number of times because a single transaction affects multiple outcomes. And then taking a pound away makes a loss of 2, 3, 4 pounds overall in the economy when you don't add value to that change you introduce. That's the problem. One thing that is important, practically, money has no use whatsoever from my point of view. Money in itself. I want to share something that many of you should be conversant with. It's an old Indian proverb that says, only when the last tree has died and the last river been poisoned and the last fish being caught, will we realize we cannot eat money. Money doesn't feed you. You buy things that feed you. That is a concept that is difficult to understand, but money doesn't buy you happiness. Happiness comes from things that you own, services you enjoy, that you have to pay for because of the mechanism that has been created around the consumeristic society. If you go back to the very root of everything bad that has happened in human society, wars, poverty, exploitation, slavery, pollution, climate change, at the back of it, at the very bottom of the pile, there's always the greed and the quest to get more money, to get hard cash. Everything is driven by that. And money strangely has no upside. If you do a SWOT analysis, you'll see that there's no upside, because if you don't have it, it's bad because people shun you. If you have it, it's bad because people hate you. That's very simple. Money solicits greed, but doesn't really satisfy greed because it has no inherent value. Humans are only satisfied by goods and services.
Would you agree, Corrado, with the statement that most people would be happy with a certain amount of money? I mean, this depends so much on how many children you have and so on, you know, how big your family is. But I'm talking about needs: shelter, food, amusement, you know, basic human needs, having running water, hot water, and so on. Most people are not looking to be trillionaires or billionaires or millionaires. But it seems that once you get into that circuit of, say, having millions, then suddenly the pursuit becomes to get more millions. I think that's my observation. See, I cannot put myself in the place of someone who wants to just keep going with billions and billions of dollars. If someone gave me X amount of money, I mean, no one's giving me anything anyway. You know, we earn our money, we have it, we do what we have to do with it. But my point is, I don't think most people are chasing it. But a lot of the high visibility people we see, including so many politicians, it seems obvious that that is their goal, that is their game. They want money and they want power. And power is money, and money is power. Am I wrong?
Exactly. But as I said, because money is empty, doesn't give you anything. It doesn't satisfy your greed. So you want more of it. It's
right.
like a drug.
Right.
Okay, that's the problem. It's an empty container. Doesn't have anything inside. And the more you have, the more you're dissatisfied because it doesn't give you happiness. Money doesn't give you happiness.
So money is like Docker. It's a container and it doesn't give you happiness.
Exactly. We are told that we need money. And let me share something very simplistic, extremely simplistic I've drawn, but it should be enough to wake some reasoning. We are told that we need money to buy goods or services. Goods or services have a price. Why? Because they have a cost and someone needs to make a profit. Why someone needs to make a profit? Because they need money to buy goods or services. And why goods or services have a cost? Because goods or services have a price. You see this loop that never ends. There's never an exit from this loop. This is entrapment. Money is an instrument of entrapment. Do you get this concept or not? It's pretty simplistic.
I totally get the concept, but I have a problem to pose to you, which is, if we were living in a society where you needed eggs and you go to the farmer and get the eggs, and the barter, for example, the barter society, you get the eggs and then you fix the farmer's TV set or whatever, tractor or whatever. But once we've got water coming into our homes and electricity, and that stuff all needs to maintain, I think the biggest problem that poses itself is, how do you keep all this huge infrastructure running? You need highways, you need, you know, if we were just making cars and didn't need highways, I could see how you could have craftspeople even making cars, and you could go barter with them and everybody could just do everything they want to do free. But once you need a massive structure of some kind, like roads being maintained, as poorly as they are maintained in most places these days, by the way, it's hard to see how you could do away with money, because money is just this fake, I agree, fake concept. But what are you going to do? Do you have any suggestions for where we could go from here?
If you let me ramble for another little bit, we're going to that.
We have 4 hours at least, so go ahead. I'll be right back.
I'm okay. There are some suggestions about how to exit that infinite loop. We have looked at. One is cryptocurrencies to release more money into circulation, so money doesn't have such a deep effect on our life and doesn't affect our lives. There are some proposals to offer a citizen's income. So whatever you do, if you do it or not, because you're a citizen, you will get some money. Because you exist, you will get some money. But again, they are attempts to patch a problem that is there, because we don't recognize, we're curing the symptoms and not attacking the disease. We're trying to patch up a system that is based on money that is not working. We know that is not working. Boom and bust. During the boom, the rich make money. During the bust, the poor lose money. 1% of the population of the earth owns 97% of the wealth. The trickle-down redistribution doesn't work because a rich person can use, yes, a triple layer bog roll on the toilet instead of a single ply or a newspaper, but it's just one bum to wipe. It's just one car to own. Do you see the point? Trickle down doesn't work. The super rich that own 1,000 times and earn 1,000 times more than you do, don't spend 1,000 times more in goods and services. So the trickle-down effect that the consumeristic society peddles will never work. It's impossible. There are other mechanisms that can reward good deeds, but most of all, the most important of a society without money and currency, and there are many of them, is a life without oppression. So a life where you're not worried about taking that last bit of money out of someone else for yourself and your family. Isn't that good enough for everyone? And to continue to do the work you're doing or another job you do because you like doing that, and because you like your job, you do it better, and there are better products and better services. So everyone would possibly have a better outcome if we get rid of money. I know I told you it was challenging, but the poor, the middle class, the bourgeoisie, the rich, developed countries and developing nations, the only losers here, if we get rid of money, are the parasites. They are the only losers.
But the parasites are strong.
But they are few, they're just 1%. And some of them agree that they are overdoing it. If you agree, you might put the link I sent you on the comments of the YouTube video or somewhere else, if you can find it. There are plutocrats that say, be careful, because we have pushed the boat too far, and people are rightfully upset, and the pitchforks will come. We are at the point of breaking.
I think there's some interesting things here. I've pondered for the last couple of years this trend in universal basic income. But it seems to be a Band-Aid it seems to be a small Band-Aid on a big wound, and it's not going to close it. And because income alone is not enough. Income only sustains the existing dogma. And what you really need is value. You need to give people not just money,
value.
Because you're not giving them anything. You actually need to give I can't remember. There was
Comfort.
a terminology. There was a terminology. I mean, the goal is correct, because the goal is assuring that everybody has enough to sustain themselves.
Yeah.
And the trouble is, you're kind of, it's like two wars. The one war is universal basic income and fighting the entrenched dogmas. But to get beyond that to the value proposition, it requires an awareness, a sensitivity that a lot of people who have money will cling to because of money. So giving up money is not easy. But giving away more money only entrenches money more.
Yeah, the problem is if we stop, because 1% or 5% of the world population could have a worse life, we're not making it better for the 95 or 99% of the other. Sure. We're at a point where if we stand by and do nothing against the dictatorship of the 1%, we're not going very well, because the greed of some of these that possibly are mentally insane sociopaths, so they're not aware of the damage they are inflicting on society, is we have 10-15 years before climate change is so reversible that we will have completely deployed our opportunities to reverse or stop climate change. That will not mean that the planet will end. That means that humanity will end, and the planet will still be here, and nobody will own the land that some people claim they are owners of. The ground will still be here. Humans will not. George Carlin said that the planet is fine. Humans are fucked. That's the point.
Yeah. There's an interesting article that I read about 10 days ago, and it's on Medium, and it basically it makes a good case that universal basic income, as the title says, is Silicon Valley's latest scam. And the reason being, we have these giant companies, you have these Googles and these Facebooks, who are in effect feeding on the population of humanity. And that giving people money, just giving people money, is only a way of them sustaining their business model. So if they can convince governments to up the social safety nets of the world, whether they call it UBI or something else, all they're doing is sort of, well, it's completely self-serving.
It's like some drug dealers that say, well, the first one is on me, is it?
Well, it's not even as nefarious as that, but it's not taking on the bigger issue of providing for people in a way that money does not. And but boy, in all of this is all an economic argument to this point. And
it's a socioeconomic argument, because with no money and consequently no property, we have no need for heavy-handed governments and law enforcement.
There's a moral component to it that I would think we should be seeing other players in this space. But those players, religious organizations and the like, they are sidelined by their own issues and their own legacy and their own inability and ineffectiveness.
Like the Roman Catholic Church that is
largest landowner in the world, right?
Yeah,
pays no taxes.
But as I was saying, the money and property disappearing means also the death of consumerism, resource exploitation, and excess production, because we are producing in excess of demand. There are a lot of products that are scrapped even before reaching retail, because they cannot be sold. Cars, I've seen a video on a lot of 10,000 security cameras still in their boxes that have had to be disposed of according to WE rules and they couldn't be sold because it was anti-economical to sell them. So we are manufacturing things, we are exploiting resources, and then we have to pay to destroy what we're manufacturing because it's not economically viable to sell them. And why do we have to produce those goods? Because we have people that need to work, because they need wages, because they need money. They need money to buy things that they cannot afford to buy. How many of you listening and watching are in a job where they are manufacturing goods they cannot afford to buy on their wages? Anyone that works at a production line of a car, of a prestige car, you know how to build it. You have the tools to build it, but you will never be able to afford that car in the whole of your life because your wages are not good enough. If we get rid of money, all this inequality disappears, and all the resources that are not bound to produce goods and services for the collectivity are released for humans to do things that are way, way better. Art, science, many other endeavors, many other things, many jobs that are now completely unaffordable, that are impossible to do because they don't take home enough money for that person to survive. How much better would be society if people unleashed from the shackles of money could do what they liked, do it better, do good, great things, and help everyone else. I know it's a very, very, very big paradigm shift, but it's a seed I'm launching in the ether to see if anyone. It will grow from my point of view, because indications with the citizens, basic citizens income and cryptocurrencies and many other patches that we are trying to put onto the consumeristic society we have in the developed world will collapse at some point because people will no longer believe in it. And there are societies and cultures around the planet that don't use money at all, that don't recognize property, and they're still there, and they're probably older than the capitalistic society. I probably have bored everyone stiff enough today.
Absolutely not in my case. I think it's a fascinating topic. It's a tough one, very hard.
It's hard because it's challenging, and it's challenging some constructs that you've been led to believe the whole of your life. Since you were a child, you were asked to do chores to get money. It's some sort of conditioning that comes from even your own family.
Absolutely. But let me ask.
In school, they're asking you to add. And how are you taught in school to do additions and subtractions, often with things they have to buy and sell with currency and money?
That's not in my day. It wasn't, because that didn't exist. But I would ask you this, Corrado, Michael, and Andy, if you're still interested. And that is, if you work for yourself, because I think that's the case for everybody, pretty much. Michael has worked for himself and has his own company. I just want to ask a question. Do you?
Just a point. Nobody works for themselves. You do work for your client.
Yes, you do.
For everybody else.
No, but what I meant was that you're not, because
you're
the
not
problem. Well, no, because the problem, I think everybody will understand, unless you've been salaried all your life, you understand the difference between working for yourself and so-called working for yourself, which is your clients, and working for a company. When you're working for a company, you may or may not invest yourself at the same level. When you're working for yourself, you also may not invest yourself 100%. I'm sure there are very jive consultants in all walks of life. But I would have to say that I'm going to guess, because I know how I acted, how my wife and I, when we had our company, acted towards our customers, and how I think you, Corrado, act, and I'm going to guess Michael too, that you wouldn't let something out of the door if you didn't think it represented the quality that you're capable of. Is that right or wrong, first of all?
Yes, absolutely. Quality and absolutely ethical. I'm not taking money away from people if I'm not adding value to what I'm proposing and what I'm offering.
But not maybe. Go ahead, Michael.
The interesting thing about being self-employed, to your point, yes, of course. And I would hope, obviously, to anybody who knows us. But at the same time, if you've ever lived on a farm, that's different than working for yourself. It's different than, issuing forth your own job. But, that's where if you're raising, the things that you eat, then it's kind of different again, right? That's truly working for oneself, not in one's own employ at the service of others.
Yeah. Well, you can have an allotment here from the council and grow your own vegetables, your own fruit, keep your own chickens, and then eat them. It's absolutely normal. And in fact, you're working for yourself. You're making things for yourself. Yes, but it's a fringe. Whereas probably 100 years ago was absolutely normal.
Well, I think the reason I asked the question and the reason I brought that up is because at the same time, if you're working for a company that has, say it's a factory with 550 employees, other than the whip or the carrot, not everybody is putting 100% of themselves into it. And in a way, you can understand that because, hey, I'm not sharing the profits. So I think that's the core of the problem of the part of what you're talking about, Corrado, is that if you're not sharing directly in the profits of compared to the quality that you're producing, then you lose the desire to produce something good. In the case of universal basic income, I've heard arguments for and against. I think in some ways it's a great idea, but I understand the arguments against it. I don't believe that people are basically lazy and that the minute some plan like that came out, no one would want to work. Speaking for myself, and again, for all of you that I know, who I know well, we wouldn't just sit around. Well, of course, when you're retired, you can. But my point is, it would not instigate in me a sentiment that, hey, I don't have to do anything anymore. I still do a lot of things, and I'm not paid for them. Go ahead.
One point. If we look at automation, that is currently scary because it's taking away jobs from people, it would work so well in a world without money, with less people working and more robots doing things, releasing people from the from the repetitive jobs of a production line to do something better with their lives.
But that's actually inevitable when mechanization comes in, right?
Exactly.
Automation.
That is a problem with the consumeristic society where you need wages to buy things. If money is no longer there, you don't need to work. You need a product to reach the shelves.
But how do you pay for the product? So the robots are constructing everything. Investment in all of that is maybe minimal after it all gets...
Investment with what?
No, I mean investment. You have to build the factory.
Imagine money never existed.
No, but you still have to build the factory. Who builds the factory? The robots build the factory. Okay, the robots build the...
There are people that are willing to do jobs they like. Brickies. There are some jobs that are so hard to do physically that, yes, you do them for the money, but you also do them because you like to do that kind of job, because you're an expert, because what you make, you create, has a value, a beauty, it gives you some kind of satisfaction. And if that is not enough to drive you to do something, to make something, to build a house, there's also the added satisfaction that when you finish laying that row of bricks and you go home, you have a home, you have hot water, you have a wife, you have food on your table, but you don't have the pressure of the money bearing on you. It's a life without worry.
But wait a minute.
Is the prize.
Right. And I totally concur with you. But how many people are going to get direct pleasure out of being on the 67th floor of a, on a standing on a steel beam? Go ahead. You know where I'm going.
Yeah, there are people that hang out of buildings for the thrill.
But would they be exhilarating in doing that for 3 months on the same site? I mean, I know maybe. I'd love to interview. I'd love to interview construction workers, because a lot of construction workers are immigrants in every country. In this country, there was at one time there were mostly Portuguese people were working on construction sites.
That's a strange effect, because the more people from one country enter a kind of job, it creates some sort of ecosystem where everyone speaks the same language.
Oh, yeah.
It's important in some kind of jobs. So there is no language barrier. There's that kind of automatic adjustment of one particular sector that, it's been the butt of all jokes, but here in the UK, Irish doing the tarmac, doing roads.
Mm-hmm.
But because it was their expertise, they were good at it, and they came and they tarmacked a lot of roads in the United Kingdom. That's what they did. But it was their expertise. They were paid well to do that, and they provided good service at good value. Again, you don't need money to be rewarded for what you do. And if we are living in a society where money is not involved, not everyone has to work. That's the point. Discarding products, as I said, that we manufactured has a cost, human cost, time, resources, environment, and destroying them also. We are wasting twice human energy. We don't need that work done to make things and destroy them. There are orange tree fields in Sicily, where about 55% of the oranges that are produced by the orange fields, those orange fields are taken and destroyed on the spot, because otherwise they would flood the market, and there is money coming from Europe to the farmers to destroy them. Otherwise, the price of the oranges will collapse so much for overproduction that it wouldn't be economically viable to bring them to the shelves.
So we need a revolution?
We need a change of attitude. We need to understand that money is an entrapment. Money is a cycle that is at the basis of many of the nasty things that are happening, have happened, and probably will happen in the future.
As the age-old Bible quote, root of all evil.
The root of all evil, yeah. And another quote, I think it's from a very old song, "We are all made of stars." Was that
we started with that, didn't we?
Yeah, exactly. To go back full circle.
We've been going for 1 hour. I think we should just rename the VUC. We got to find things that'll do that, because we can just talk about this topic the whole time. I mean, this is so deep that 1 hour is nothing. We could go on and on.
Just a seed, because it spawns in many other things. It challenges all the constructs of our consumeristic society, capitalistic society, in the first world society, where there are other societies and organizations and cultures that don't ascribe of what we do, and they have been here for hundreds, thousands of years.
I think mostly, though, there have been, if somebody mentioned Native American, I think Michael, in that case, they were literally overpowered, outranked, overpowered. Now the situation is grim, to say the best.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, recently, a certain party in the United States made a law that made it so that no Native American can vote, because they do not have addresses. They only have P.O. boxes. Now, you can't vote with P.O. boxes I think this is in one state or two, but the point is the state has a huge population of Native Americans. Talk about someone who's gotten screwed. I mean, you could do 1,000 podcasts on that topic, but the problem is that here we are in this system and we're ensconced in it. And there's no good way other than destroying the planet. And we're doing a great job going in that direction. So
we are in that direction. I would be happy to stop using money with anyone else that is happy to stop using money. I would stop using money for people that buy my services, that use my services, if they give something back.
So barter economy.
And not even directly to me. It doesn't matter. As far as there is some sort of return for me from the society at large, I am happy to give my services without a return for money. It's not just one-to-one.
Okay, not barter. It's society gives you back. Okay, but that's what money is, kind of, in a way, because not society, but the capitalistic part of society gives you money for hours you spend producing some service or product, right?
But it's not enough. It's not enough, and it's the source of all stress, uncertainty, discrimination, and so on.
We could call that a level of indirection, right? That's what that is. The indirection in that you work, you spend a certain number of hours, or you produce a certain amount of service or product.
Yeah.
And you have a credit, which is an indirection, in other words, of X that allows you to buy something else.
But to buy from who? Because if someone else is giving the goods that you need without asking for money, you don't need to give money to obtain that.
That's a nice theory, but I don't see how someone is going to give you a place to live. It doesn't, I don't see a way that we could do that.
Because it's the thing is so entrenched that it's a bit difficult to go by. By the way, building with natural materials is going into fashion again. So you're building with
wood,
straw bales or straw mixed with clay and things, and you're building your house out of materials taken from the ground. Again, we're going back, circling to the beginning, that nobody owns, that it's on a piece of land that nobody owns, and you build something there and you build your house. I know it's going back to uncivilized prehistoric propositions, but we can continue to produce bricks and build houses. The bricks are made from clay. It's in the ground. It's there. Has been there forever. Is free.
I think the absolute worst example of what you're talking about, not what you're talking about, but the opposite of what you're talking about, is the fact that so many people and companies, families and corporations are buying up water. Because water is something that is part of what you initially said. It comes from the stars, or it's on the planet. And how could anybody own water? And yet there are rights. Those rights are sold, and companies, including Nestle, if I'm not mistaken, is a big time operator in that. And pretty soon there's going to be no water. Wars, droughts, huge wars, famine. It's all caused by this lack of water. And yet someone owns the water.
Yes. And we are 70% water as our body.
So the obvious solution is just to melt all the humans down and get the water out. And with that,
a bit of sweat.
And with that, seriously, I mean, not much further we can go without extending it to next week, which is fine with me.
Right. If someone is still alive after this.
Yeah, hard to say. We might find pipe bombs in our mail, right?
Another topic.
Anybody else have anything to say on ZipDX or anyone else? Michael, Andy, conclusions?
Not conclusions, but I think some of the folks who are preaching, a baby steps approach, I think that's the UBI folks are doing that. They've chosen to fight a battle where they think they have a chance of winning, as opposed to take the longer view that was described here, and which may only, or the pessimistic perception on that is that that's what happens when the next generation of humanoid replaces us after the planet's been scourged. But yeah, there you go.
in substance, in synthesis, you're saying we don't have enough time for baby steps. We need to leap. Is what you're saying, Michael?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I think UBI is sort of a baby steps approach to what is a much larger problem, or it's a baby step in an approach to addressing the whole thing. But the whole idea of sort of casting aside the society constructs of currency and property seems like a much bigger battle, one that the present humanoid population might not be able to make. It seems to me like that'll be for a next generation of the population of the planet, not this one.
Yeah. Yeah, because you
that's
think
kind of fatalist.
We will run out of time.
Yeah, it's kind of fatalist, but there's value in knowing, or not knowing, but there's a limit to what we can do, not based on our ability to do it, but based on our willingness to do things. And we need a large enough group of sufficiently powerful people who are dedicated to doing something that's perhaps quite challenging.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we've done great things in the past, so very possibly. But bang the drum, brother, bang the drum.
I will. I'm trying.
I think these things are worth talking about, and I'm really glad that you brought it up. And with that, I think the only other thing to say is